You're listening to
DNA ID.
brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, Missing Persons, Scene of the Crime,
Zodiac Speaking,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective, and
Campus Killings.
all of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
This episode concerns the violent death of a child. Listener discretion is advised. On Sunday, October 27th, 1991, at around 3 in the afternoon, quail hunters were walking in a mountain wash surrounded by scrub brush in a rural area of Mentone, a small community about 65 miles east of Los Angeles. This was near East Highlands, San Bernardino County, California. About 100 yards off Florida Avenue, near where it turns into Green Spot Road, the hunters stumbled on a human skull without teeth or mandible. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office was contacted that evening, and on Monday, the hunters led the deputies back to the place where the skull lay. There was some additional evidence right near the skull. A torn plastic trash bag with the odor of decomposition and a child's clothing was found. I don't know whether the bag was partially buried or whether it was just tossed on the ground. I don't know what kind of clothing was in the bag, other than it was a child's. I don't know if a body was ever in the bag. I should tell you now that I've been working on this Doe episode for 2 years and have repeatedly put it on pause while I await input from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office, the Coroner's Office, or the Prosecutor's Office. It has become apparent that the San Bernardino authorities have no intention of answering my questions, or, it seems, of working this case any further, and I'm tired of waiting. So please forgive me when I say I just don't know nearly as many details as I'd like and as I feel this victim deserves. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office Homicide Detail assumed the investigation. On the Saturday following the discovery, starting at 4:30 a.m., an organized search of the area was conducted for more human remains, but none were located. Search and rescue teams assisted by scent dogs covered several acres surrounding the area, but found no additional pieces of evidence. The search was called off at 2:30 p.m. On Thursday, November 7th, 1991, an autopsy was performed and the coroner determined the human skull belonged to a child between 4 and 8 years old. The cause of death was undetermined. Judy Suchy, a professor of anthropology at Cal State University, Fullerton, concluded that the skull came from a child ages approximately 6 to 10. The child had died sometime in the past year and had been dead at least 2 months. But without any teeth or additional bones, she couldn't determine the race or sex of the child, much less the cause of death. At first, investigators suspected that the remains might belong to Jared Negrete, a 12-year-old Boy Scout who had gotten lost on July 19, 1991, after hiking with his Boy Scout troop to the summit of San Gorgonio Mountain, which is approximately 90 miles east of Los Angeles. According to the Charlie Project, Jared got tired around 1,000 feet from the summit and was told to remain behind alone while the others completed the hike. When the scout troop returned, Jared was gone. His camera was found with an odd close-up selfie on it, but Jared has never been seen again. On January 26, 1992, a second search was conducted in the area where the skull was found. I don't know why several months elapsed between the searches. I imagine it was weather or high water related. At this time, more remains were found. Additional bones, some human hair, and 5 teeth were located. These were 5 maxillary teeth found at the scene, a right central incisor, both lateral incisors, and both bicuspids. A forensic dentist estimated the age of the person who the teeth belonged to at 3 years and 3 months, which was very specific. In early 1992, the skull was subjected to DNA testing. This was in the early stages of the DNA era, and as of February of that year, the California Department of Justice crime lab that was to conduct the testing wasn't even open for business yet. It was determined that the remains did not belong to Jared Negrete, who, by the way, remains missing. I don't have any information on what else was done to try to identify this child. I will say that there is virtually zero mention of the finding of the remains in area newspapers, and I did not find any police bulletins. I don't know where his skull and teeth were maintained all those years before he was identified. As I said, there's a lot we don't know. The child was listed on Doe Network as UMCA 3213, was entered into NCIC, and was given an entry in NamUs as case number 2550. DNA was obtained and an STR profile was entered into the CODIS Unidentified Human Remains database. I don't know when this happened, but it was prior to the mid-2010s. I assume that since they had a DNA profile for this child, they now knew his sex and race. But again, I can't verify this, and it doesn't seem they did know his race based on the official rule-outs that were confirmed. Because of the NamUs entry, online sleuthers were able to review basic case information and submit tips about missing children whom the skull could belong to. Some official rule-outs were released by NamUs. The remains did not belong to Michael Dunahee, a 4-year-old Caucasian boy who went missing from a playground at Blanchard Elementary School in Victoria, British Columbia, on Sunday, March 24, 1991. Michael is believed to have been abducted. He has never been found. Nor did the remains belong to Travis J. Zweig, a 3-year-old Caucasian boy last seen on March 10, 1991, outside his home in Pinyon Pines, California. Finally, the deceased child was not Thomas Dean Gibson, a 2-year-old Caucasian boy who vanished from his front yard in Glendale, Oregon, on March 18, 1991. In that case, the child's father, Larry Gibson, a deputy Douglas County Sheriff, was charged with second-degree murder in Thomas's death in April 1994. He was convicted of manslaughter in March of 1995 and served less than 1 year in prison. Thomas remains missing. All 3 boys were ruled out as being a match to Mentone Child Doe. Can I just say it's incredible how many missing children are out there. I hadn't heard of any one of these kids before I wrote this episode. So Mentone Child Doe remained unidentified. Little did the investigators know someone was looking for this child, but that person clearly had not been advised to enter her DNA into the Relatives of Missing Persons database of CODIS. In 2022, San Bernardino authorities decided to use IgG to try to identify Mentone Child Doe. In October of that year, with funding provided by Roads to Justice, the California Department of Justice sent some of the remains, I presume some of the teeth, to Othram Labs. According to the lab's press release, Othram used forensic-grade genome sequencing to build a SNP profile for the unknown child, and then Othram's in-house genealogist conducted an IgG analysis. I have zero information about what kinds of DNA matches were found in the open-source databases when the Othram genealogist uploaded the SNP profile. It sounds as though the matches pointed to a family in the Houston, Texas area. In February of 2023, Othram directed the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department homicide detail to this family. The investigators contacted some suspected genetic relatives in the family tree. They performed reference testing after obtaining voluntary samples from some family members. The FBI was involved in the investigation, both in Riverside, California, and Houston, Texas. And they were able to identify the mother of Mentone Child Doe. Her name was Patricia Clark, and she was still alive. When San Bernardino County investigators contacted Patricia, they were shocked to learn that she had reported her child missing to the San Bernardino Police Department in 1991. A DNA sample from Patricia was obtained using a family tree DNA kit, and uploading her SNP profile revealed that she was a 100% parental match to the human remains of Mentone Child Doe, now known to be Derrick Anthony Burton. Derrick was born on August 9, 1988 in San Bernardino, meaning he was not even 3 years old when he was left in a trash bag on a remote mountainside in Mentone. A missing persons report was filed for him around 1991, and remains were found that same year that remained unidentified until 2023. Someone was not paying attention, it seems. I will say it is very unclear when exactly Derrick disappeared. From what I can gather from the very spotty reports, Patricia told investigators that Derrick vanished around November of 1990, but she did not file a missing persons report until sometime in 1991. Hold on, it gets weirder. A man named Ismail Abdul Hameen was accused of kidnapping Derrick. This is from a San Bernardino Sun article dated March 8, 1992, quote, Derrick's mother, Patricia Abdul Hameen, age 25, last saw her toddler in an East Street apartment in San Bernardino when she walked out after an argument with her husband. When she returned the next day, Derrick was gone, end quote. What that quote fails to specify is that Ismail Abdul Hameen was Patricia's husband. Yes, in November 1990, Ismail Abdul Hameen abducted then 2-year-old Derrick from his mother, Patricia, Abdul Hameen's wife. According to what Patricia told a judge, Derrick disappeared while she was cooling off after an argument with her 38-year-old husband, who told her, quote, Derrick wouldn't behave and he was hard-headed. Abdul Hameen would not tell Patricia where the boy was. Patricia reported Derrick missing, although again I have no date for this. It was sometime in 91. Abdul Hameen was questioned and told the investigators that he had sent Derrick back to Amman, Jordan, to be raised as a Muslim. A judge ordered Abdul Hameen to return Derrick to Patricia post-haste. According to The Sun, multiple court orders were issued ordering the man, the child's stepfather, to locate and return the child. He continued to ignore the court orders and refused to provide any information, and now we know why. Derrick had been dead and dumped in the mountains the whole time. 5 months after Derrick was last seen, Abdul Hameen pleaded guilty to parental child abduction, a felony in the state of California. He got a 3-year prison sentence at medium-security Chuckawalla State Penitentiary. I simply cannot imagine the frustration and fury that Patricia must have felt at her husband's refusal to reveal the whereabouts of her only son. However, Patricia clearly wasn't as upset as I would have been, because I was shocked to see that on December 31st, 1994, Patricia and Ismail Abdul Hameen were living together in Victorville and had another baby, a girl. This means Patricia must have gotten pregnant in about March of 1994, which in turn means that Abdul Hameen was out of prison after serving only about 2 years. Of course, if this whole abduction had happened now instead of back in 1991, police would have been able to track Abdul Hameen's movements through his car and phone, and would have been able to locate Derrick quickly once Patricia reported him missing. But police didn't have any of that back then. The dump site was quite a distance from where the family lived, and Patricia had reported Derrick missing to the San Bernardino City Police. The remains were in the custody of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office. No one ever put 2 and 2 together. Once Abdul Hameen came up with this ridiculous story that he had sent Derrick to Jordan to be raised as a Muslim, I have no idea whether investigators reached out to the U.S. State Department or the Jordanian government in efforts to verify this story. And I think likely not, if they did any investigating at all, because Ismail Abdul Hameen was not from Jordan and was not born a Muslim. His real name was Christopher Hammond, and he was a Black American born and raised in Michigan by parents George Hammond and Agnes Walker Hammond. Hammond was born on May 11, 1953 in Detroit. I have no idea when he began using the name Ismail Abdul Hameen, but if you look him up in FamilySearch.org, you can see his entry there under both names. I also have no idea whether Patricia Clark, who married him and took his new surname, Abdul Hameen, knew that he was really Chris Hammond. I have no idea who Derrick Burton's real father was. It was not Christopher Hammond. And I don't know whether Patricia bought her husband's story that he had sent her boy to Jordan. Clearly, she forgave him since they had a child together after Derrick vanished. So the next logical question is, now that Derrick has been identified, and it seems 100% likely that Hammond/Abdul Hameen was responsible, why hasn't he been arrested? Well, according to United States Social Security Death Index information excerpted on FamilySearch.org, Ismail Abdul Hameen lived in Houston County, Texas, from January 1st, 1996 to June 1st, 2001. He died on July 22nd, 2000 in Wayne, Michigan at the age of 47. I don't know how all those things could be true, but in any event, it does appear that he is deceased. I could not find anything whatsoever about his death, though, so I can't verify it. But his being deceased would explain why the San Bernardino authorities have not arrested him. It doesn't explain why they won't say anything about his involvement. All the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department will say is that the Sheriff's Homicide Unit continues to investigate the circumstances around Derrick Burton's disappearance and death. Anyone with additional information is asked to contact Detective Edward Hernandez, Specialized Investigations Division, Homicide Detail, Cold Case Team, at 909-890-4904. I tried to contact the San Bernardino Sheriff's investigator repeatedly over the past 18 months and have continually been denied an interview. They would not even answer questions that I emailed. I can't explain their unwillingness to share information about this case. They don't have to come out and say Christopher Hammond did it. But they could provide basic information, such as, did Hammond/Abdul Hamid have any connection to the area where Derrick was found? Have they interviewed Patricia since Derrick was identified to see what she knew? When Patricia reported Derrick missing, was a thorough search of her and her husband's home and vehicles conducted? Did anyone attempt to verify that a 3-year-old child had been flown to Jordan as his stepfather claimed? Who was Derrick's biological father, and has he been interviewed? Is the office considering any other suspects? 1 year ago, I was told that the Derrick Burton case remained open and was pending review by the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office. In August 2024, I was told there was no change in the status of the investigation. I'm tired of waiting to talk about Derrick, so here I am putting this episode out to remember the little boy who was last seen with his stepfather who admitted to abducting him. It's all I can do. I hope the investigators are doing more than it appears.